The first one is going to be the sales comparison approach. The sales comparison approach. There we go, the sales comparison approach. Now, on the exam, they occasionally refer to this as the market data approach. I don't know anybody that uses that terminology, market data approach. But remember, you are taking an exam that has two parts, the national portion and the Massachusetts portion. And somewhere in the country, they might refer to this as the market data. I don't, but somewhere they might. So just be aware of that. Remember, they always like to use those substitute vocabulary phrases whenever they can. So just to keep you on your toes. We call it here in Massachusetts almost always the sales comparison approach. The sales comparison approach, just get my movie announcer voice. The sales comparison approach is driven by the economic concept of substitution. It's driven by the economic concept of substitution. Jack, thanks for the movie voice, but what the heck does that mean? Well, this is something that we do as humans all the time. We don't even really think about it, but we do it all the time. We look at products that are like this, fairly similar, and I'm just drawing some squares here to represent products, and they have price tags on them, 11, 10, 12. They have price tags on them, so we know how much those are. And then we find another product on the shelf without a price tag. And in our minds, kind of subconsciously, we make adjustments for the product differential, and then we come up with what we think would be a fairly good price for this product here that doesn't have a price tag on it. I did this last year. I was out in Colorado at my nephew's house, and I found him in the morning making toast in the oven. He had like 2 pieces of bread. He's a classic, like, 23-year-old kid. You guys might be 23. I shouldn't say that. But a classic no toaster move. We'll just call it that. He had 2 pieces of bread in the oven, and he had the oven on to make toast in the morning. And I was like, Carter, come on, dude. So later that day, I went down and to Walmart while I was there, and I went to the toaster aisle going to buy this kid a toaster. So I go to the toaster aisle, pick up this toaster off the shelf. It's looks a little cheap to me, and I look at it and like, I don't know. How much is it? $20. I put it back on the shelf. Pick up this other toaster, and this looks like, woo, this is a nice toaster. It's like, 8 slice or something like that. And it's got all these features, and I'm like, that might be too much. How much is this one? $40. No, that's way too much. Then I took this other toaster off the shelf, and it was like Goldilocks. It was just right, but it didn't have a price tag. So then I did what we all do, right? We play a little game for ourselves as we're walking around Walmart looking for the scanner thing, And I was like, this probably a fair price for this toaster, probably $30 in between. And then I scanned it. It came up $25, and I was like, a middle-of-the-road toaster for $25. The high end was $40, the low end was $20. Good deal, right? And then I bought the toaster and gave it to him, and he never opened it while I was there. But maybe he liked making toast in the oven, I don't know. But anyways, we do that all the time, whether you're at Walmart or you're buying houses. We do it all the time. We use the economic concept of substitution to adjust for value, adjust for feature differential, and determine what might be a fair price. For these squares here that I came up with, obviously the fair price of this square is probably about $11. Because obviously the squares are 11, 12, and 10, and the average of that is 11, so $11. We do this all the time. How do we do this in real estate? In real estate, we produce what we call a comparative. Oh, there it goes again. Sorry about that. We produce a comparative market analysis, which we just abbreviate as a CMA. In fact, that's what you're going to put together. One of my agents just did this today for a property. That's what you're going to put together when you go over to Mrs. McGillicuddy's house tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock for your listing appointment. You're going to print out one for her and one for you, and you're going to go over the comparative market analysis, which will have the comps, the comparables, the comps, so that you can determine what the value of her house is, what the market value is. Because we don't really know the market price until somebody actually buys it, right? So I'm going to look, using the comps, we're going to look for comps that are close to Mrs. McGillicuddy's house, so that when we go over there, or when you go over there, you can present her report using one of the 3 approaches to value, using the sales comparison approach to value, and you can tell her, hey, Mrs. McGillicuddy, your house is worth $500,000, or whatever the number happens to be. Jack, I'm new in this business. How do I produce a CMA? Well, fortunately, the vast majority of you are going to be members of the Multiple Listing Service, the MLS. The MLS is just a giant database of effectively 2 things. Everything that's for sale residentially, or almost everything that's for sale, and things that have sold. So, using the sold part of the database, there's a software tool built into the membership platform, built into the part that you'll have access to once you're finally an agent. And using this software tool, this piece of software, you can either, I'm just going to kind of simplify this, you can either kind of set it on automatic like a camera. You know how you get those digital cameras and you can set them to automatic? And they take pretty good pictures on automatic. Or once you kind of get better at it, so to speak, you can set it to manual. And like that's how I take almost all of my pictures. I take them on manual. Very rarely set it on automatic. Automatic's for beginners, kind of. That's kind of how I think about it. But there is the place for automatic every once in a while in photography. When you start off, you're probably going to set this software tool to automatic, and it will kind of automatically select the comps based upon the parameters that you put in. And yeah, isn't that nice? And it's going to spit out this CMA report, which should be adequate to go to your listing appointment. And again, as I said, as you get more adept at this over time, you'll be able to select these comps on more of a manual basis. Additionally, I would also just kind of remind you that while the software does all this stuff for you, which is great, there is no substitute for actually seeing as much property in person as you possibly can. Now, I know that sometimes that could be a challenge, but there is no substitute to actually seeing it in person. When you see things in person, right, they're not, you get to see both the good and the bad. You know how real estate agents are. They take photos in a way so that the ugly things don't show. I was just looking at a property the other day, and the photo was taken, it was perfectly taken, so to speak, to not show something that was just outside of the frame. And what was that, Jack? It was an old dilapidated house. And it was just outside. You wouldn't know unless you looked at Google Street View, which I did. And then I saw, oh, that's the house next door. No wonder why they didn't have it in the picture. So going in person, there's no substitute for that. Certainly we have technology like Google Street View and Satellite View, which helps out on these things. But there is no substitute for going in person, both inside and out. So after a while, you'll see a lot of property and a comp might come up and you might be like, no, actually, I've been to that house. That the database thinks that's a good comp, but I've been there and no, that's not a good comp. And so then you go get a better one. A couple of notes about comps. When you're doing a basic residential comparative market analysis, most of your comps are going to be within a few neighborhoods away. every town or city is different, right? Let's just take Boston. If you're doing a comp in South Boston, or the subject property is in South Boston, you wouldn't do a comp from High Park. That's too far away. You might do a comp from somewhere else in South Boston. You're probably going to keep it fairly close to the neighborhood. But a lot of that depends upon where you are, and distances are relative depending upon what part of the state you're in. Also relative is the rarity of the property. Or let me put it this way. If you're doing it a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house in the suburbs, there's a lot of those. So it's easier to find a comp nearby. If you're doing some type of oceanfront mansion with 2 in-ground pools and a helipad, there's not a lot of those, right? So you gotta cast a wider net. So that kind of speaks for itself. All right, so a little bit later in this lesson, or in this section, I want to dive back into how we actually do a comparative market analysis. You know what? We should probably, let's just do that now, and then we'll do the other 2 types of approaches to value. So just quick note, there's 3 approaches to value. We're going to do the sales comparison approach and a deep dive on that. Then we'll do the income approach, and finally the cost approach. So let's do a deep dive on the sales comparison approach. I want to show you how this actually works in real life. Okay, so what I've done here on this page is set up a very rudimentary, so this might not be exactly real life, but a rudimentary example of how we do a CMA. And what we have on the left-hand side is the description of the subject property. That is Mrs. McGillicuddy's house that we are trying to find out what the market value is. And the subject property has 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a 2-car garage, your basic suburban house. We don't know the value, so I'm going to leave that blank. The whole purpose of this exercise is to figure out that value, the market value. We are going to then find some comps, and you want to have 3 to 5 comps, and I'm kind of a stickler about this. I want to make sure that they have sold. Some real estate agents use comps that are on the market. I don't use those. I use comps that have sold, because only when it's sold in an open and free marketplace, an arm's length transaction, only then can you achieve the true market price. And I want to get Mrs. McGillicuddy the best CMA possible, and I want to look at what people are actually selling their houses for, what they actually sold for, the actual sold price, which is the market price. So comp number 1 is a perfect match. 3 beds, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage house. And it's in her neighborhood. So very, very similar. There could be style differences and whatnot, but a very similar house. I would also say that we're only using 3 metrics here: bedroom, bath, and size of the garage. There are a lot of other metrics, which we're not going to get into today. We're just going to do a rudimentary example. There's square footage and lot size, all sorts of other features. We're just going to use these 3 basic features to demonstrate the idea, the concept of a sales comparison, comparative market analysis. So this comp, we'll just say that this sold for $405. Perfect, great. Almost a perfect match, sold for $405. Comp number 2, and again, you want to use 3 to 5. We'll just use 3 for this purpose. Also sold fairly not that long ago, nearby. And it's 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, 2-car garage. It's not an exact match. It's not an exact match for bathrooms. So the number of bathrooms is wrong. So what are we going to do? Well, in this case here, we have to make an adjustment. You always make the adjustment off of the comp You never make the adjustment off of the subject property. Ooh, that's a good test question. So, how do we do that? Well, let's stipulate that a bathroom is worth $10,000. Oh, Jack, how did you come up with that number? Because I've seen a lot of real estate in this neighborhood, and I know what the difference is. I have a lot of experience. I could also use the MLS data to back that up. But again, mostly I think this comes from this nuance, comes from seeing a lot of property. Hope you get that point. So I'm going to say a bathroom's worth $10,000. Let's just stipulate that for this exercise. My question to you is, do we add or do we subtract $10,000 from the sales price of this house? Oh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Have you thought of an answer yet? Right, we got to make an adjustment, and we got to either add or subtract. What do you think? The answer is we add, because this house does not have enough bathrooms, so we have to lift it up to the point as if it was the subject property. Yeah, we got to add it. We add the value of the bathroom to make the adjustment. And let's just say it sold for $399. The adjusted value would be $409. $409 after we make the adjustment. This is the adjusted value down here. You didn't get that one? About half of the people usually say subtract, but actually it's add. Let's do another one. Comp number 3. Also, let's just say in the neighborhood, sold not that long ago, within the last couple of months. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, 3-car garage, we'll say. It's too much house. And therefore, you have to subtract the value of the garage. Oh, that makes sense, Jack. Let's say a garage is $8,000. And this sold for $420, we'll say. So the adjusted value is $412. Because we got to adjust this one too, right? Then you just take your friendly calculator, and there is a calculator built into the exam interface. Just to let you know, you can use the calculator that's built into the exam computer, so to speak. And you just average that out. Add them all up, 1226 divided by 3. And the value of Mrs. McGillicuddy's house, market value, is $408,666. So when you go down to Mrs. McGillicuddy's house tomorrow, sit down and have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever it is she offers you. Whatever it is, just say yes. You're going to give her this report. You're going to tell her that her house is worth $408,000.